What if the next Washington quarter you pick up isn't just 25 cents, but a coin hiding a story that most people would never notice? Before you spend another quarter, stop and look closely, because today we're going hunting through 4 Washington quarters that could have collectors asking some very serious questions. We're talking about different dates, mint marks, unusual surfaces, possible varieties, and the tiny manufacturing clues that can separate an ordinary quarter from a truly fascinating collectible. And here's where things get interesting. Some Washington quarters are valuable because of condition, while others become desirable because of a genuine mint error or recognized variety. A strange line, unusual doubling, missing detail, an abnormal edge, or even a completely unexpected planche can change the entire story. But don't make the mistake of thinking every old quarter is automatically worth a fortune. The real secret is knowing what to look for and what not to mistake for an error. In this video, we're examining 4 Washington quarters one by one, uncovering their history, composition, physical specifications, condition, rarity clues, collector demand, and potential market interest. So grab your magnifying glass, check your coin jar, and keep your eyes open, because the most important clue on these 4 quarters might be something you would normally overlook. Let's reveal coin number 1. First up, take a close look at the 1978 D Washington quarter. At first glance, this coin may seem like exactly what you would expect from a late 1970s American quarter. It has Washington's familiar portrait on the obverse, the date 1978 beneath his neck, and the small D mint mark identifying the Denver Mint. On the reverse, the majestic American eagle spreads its wings, surrounded by the inscriptions that made the Washington quarter one of the most recognizable coins in American history. But this is where the story becomes much more interesting. The coin we're examining today is described as exhibiting moderate overall circulation wear, flattened breast feathers, and light hairline contact scratches, placing it in the very fine range under the scenario we're discussing. And that condition immediately tells us something important. This isn't necessarily a coin that looks perfect under a magnifying glass. In fact, its circulated appearance is part of what makes the investigation so intriguing. When collectors examine a coin, they don't simply ask, "Is it old?" They ask a much more complicated question. What exactly is this coin? How was it produced? How rare is the specific example? And what characteristics separate it from millions of ordinary pieces? That distinction is crucial. The Washington Quarter series began in 1932, created to commemorate the 200th anniversary of George Washington's birth. Over the decades, the design became one of the most familiar symbols of American coinage. The original quarters were struck in silver for many years, but by 1965, the composition changed dramatically. The United States Mint introduced the copper-nickel-clad composition, and the 1978 D quarter belongs to this later era. That means when you're holding a 1978 D quarter, you're not holding a silver Washington quarter simply because it has an older appearance. Instead, you're dealing with a coin from the clad era. And this is one of the first lessons every beginner should understand. Date alone does not determine rarity. You can have an old coin that is worth very little, and you can have a comparatively modern coin that becomes highly desirable because of an unusual error, exceptional preservation, remarkable provenance, scarce variety, or a combination of characteristics that attracts serious collectors. Now let's talk about the D mint mark. The D tells us the coin was struck at the Denver Mint. For collectors, mint marks can be extremely important because different United States mint facilities produced coins in different quantities and sometimes created distinct varieties, errors, or production characteristics. On a 1978 D Washington quarter, the mint mark itself isn't automatically proof of rarity. That's another misconception worth clearing up. Finding a D beneath the date doesn't mean you've discovered a guaranteed jackpot. Instead, the mint mark is the beginning of the investigation. You want to inspect the date carefully. Look at the lettering. Examine the spacing. Study the rim. Check the devices on both sides. Look for unusual doubling, die characteristics, missing details, abnormal surfaces, off-center striking, clipped planches, broad strikes, or other genuine mint-made abnormalities. And most importantly, learn to separate damage from mint error. That's where many treasure hunters make a mistake. A scratch that happened after the coin left the mint is usually damage, A strange line created during the striking process can be something completely different. A flattened area caused by circulation isn't necessarily an error. But if a feature can be demonstrated to have originated during manufacturing, it may deserve much closer attention. Now let's examine the condition described for our featured example. We're told this 1978 D quarter shows moderate overall wear. That means the coin has clearly spent time circulating. Everyday transactions can be brutal on coins. Quarters rub against other coins, fall onto hard surfaces, move through cash registers, sit inside drawers, and sometimes spend decades inside jars or containers. Every one of those interactions can leave evidence. The highest points of Washington's portrait gradually lose sharpness. Fine design lines become less distinct. The eagle on the reverse begins to lose some of its original definition, and the tiny details that were once crisp can become soft. In this example, one of the notable features is the flattened breast feathers on the eagle. That is exactly the type of detail a collector should examine carefully. The eagle's breast feathers are among the areas where wear can become visually obvious. When a coin circulates heavily, high points are exposed to repeated friction. As those points become worn, the individual feather details can merge together or appear flatter. But here's the fascinating part. Condition isn't simply about whether a coin has scratches or wear. Professional grading considers the entire coin. How much wear is present, where it appears, the strength of the strike, the surfaces, luster, eye appeal, and other factors. That's why two coins with the same date and mint mark can have dramatically different collector appeal. One could be heavily damaged and ordinary, another could be unusually well preserved. And another could have a legitimate mint error or variety that changes the entire conversation. Our featured example is described as very fine condition, which means we should not pretend that moderate circulation wear magically disappears. The coin should be evaluated honestly. Now let's talk about those light hairline contact scratches. This is another detail that can tell a story. Hairline contact marks can occur when coins rub against one another or come into contact with surfaces. On a circulated coin, small marks are not unusual. But collectors pay attention to whether those marks are minor or severe, whether they affect the main design, and whether they significantly reduce visual appeal. A coin with attractive surfaces and limited distractions can be much more desirable than one covered in deep scratches. And that brings us to one of the most important ideas in the entire rare coin market. Value is not created by age alone. Value comes from a combination of rarity, demand, condition, authenticity, historical importance, varieties, errors, and the willingness of collectors to compete for a particular piece. So how does the $80,000 figure enter today's story? The value we're discussing for this video is the stated target market value supplied for this particular coin scenario. It should not be interpreted as a guaranteed price for every 1978 D Washington quarter. A normal circulated 1978 D quarter is not automatically worth $80,000 merely because it has the correct date and mint mark. That distinction is extremely important for anyone watching this video and searching through their own collection. If you find a 1978 D quarter, don't immediately assume you found an $80,000 coin. Instead, ask better questions. Is there a documented variety? Is there a genuine mint error? Is the coin unusually preserved? Is the surface original? Has the coin been cleaned? Does the coin match recognized examples? Has it been professionally authenticated? And most importantly, is there credible market evidence supporting the claimed valuation? Those questions can save you from both disappointment and expensive mistakes. Now imagine finding this coin inside an old collection. Maybe it was sitting in a cardboard box that hasn't been opened for decades. Maybe it came from a family coin jar. Maybe someone inherited a collection without knowing what was inside. The coin might look ordinary because it has circulated wear. But that is exactly why experienced collectors don't rely on appearance alone. They investigate, they compare, they measure, they photograph, they study, and when something looks genuinely unusual, they seek professional authentication. Let's talk about the physical specifications of the Washington quarter because these details can help confirm that you're dealing with the correct denomination. A standard Washington quarter has a diameter of approximately 24.3 millimeters and a weight of approximately 5.67 grams for the clad composition used during this era. Its thickness is roughly 1.75 millimeters. These measurements aren't just trivia, they can help identify suspicious pieces. If someone claims that a coin is an extraordinary mint error, but the weight or dimensions are dramatically inconsistent without a reasonable explanation, that's a reason to investigate further. Collectors can use a precise digital scale, calipers, and magnification to document unusual coins. But remember, tools don't replace expertise. A kitchen scale isn't enough to authenticate a valuable coin. A phone camera isn't enough to prove a rare variety, and an online comment saying that's worth $80,000 isn't the same thing as a documented auction result. The serious collector's approach is evidence first. Now turn the coin over. Look closely at the reverse. The American eagle dominates the design, with its wings spread and its powerful symbolism representing the United States. Examine the lettering around the perimeter. Study the rim. Look at the details around the eagle and the wreath of inscriptions. Then move back to the obverse. Study Washington's hair, look around the ear, examine the lettering, inspect the date, and then focus on the mint mark. Don't rush. One of the biggest mistakes people make when searching coins is looking for only one obvious feature. They see a date, see a mint mark, and immediately decide whether the coin is valuable. Rare coin hunting doesn't work that way. It's more like detective work. You gather clues, you eliminate possibilities, you compare evidence, and eventually you determine whether the coin is ordinary or something worth deeper investigation. Now consider collector demand. The Washington Quarter is one of America's most collected modern coin series. Millions of Americans recognize the design immediately, making the series accessible to beginners while still offering advanced collectors thousands of possible dates, mint marks, varieties, errors, and condition challenges to investigate. That broad collector base is important. A rare coin with no collector interest can sometimes struggle to find a strong market, but a scarce coin connected to an iconic American series can attract much more attention. That's why Washington quarters remain such a fascinating hunting ground. And there is another reason these coins are exciting. They are still familiar. You don't need to travel to an ancient archaeological site to search for one. You can start with a jar of change, a box of old coins, a family collection, a dealer's bargain bin, or an inherited group of coins that nobody has examined carefully in years. Of course, most coins will not turn out to be extraordinary. That's normal. The excitement comes from the possibility. It's the same reason people search old baseball cards, vintage stamps, antique watches, and historical documents. You never know what previous generations overlooked. But if you believe you have found a potentially valuable 1978 D quarter, resist the temptation to clean it. This is one of the biggest warnings in coin collecting. Never polish a potentially valuable coin simply because you think it looks dirty. Cleaning can permanently damage the original surface and reduce collector desirability. What appears to be dirt may actually be natural toning or original surface characteristics. Instead, leave the coin as you found it and have it evaluated properly. If the coin appears genuinely unusual, professional grading and authentication can provide an independent assessment of condition and authenticity. And if someone tells you that your circulated quarter is worth $80,000, ask for evidence. Ask where that valuation came from. Ask whether comparable coins have actually sold. Ask whether the coin has been authenticated. Ask what specific feature creates the premium. That is how you move from an exciting story to responsible collecting. So, what should you remember about this 1978 D Washington quarter? First, the D mint mark identifies Denver. Second, the coin belongs to the copper-nickel-clad era of Washington quarters. Third, the described example shows moderate circulation wear, including flattened breast feathers and light hairline contact scratches. Fourth, its stated condition is very fine within the scenario we're examining. And fifth, the $80,000 figure is a stated target value for this particular video scenario, not a guaranteed value for every 1978 DD quarter. That final point may be the most important of all. Because the real treasure isn't simply knowing a giant number, The real treasure is knowing why a coin could become valuable. When you understand rarity, condition, errors, varieties, authentication, and market demand, you stop looking at coins as pieces of pocket change. You start seeing them as historical objects. And suddenly, that ordinary-looking quarter sitting at the bottom of a drawer doesn't look quite so ordinary anymore. Maybe it is nothing special. Maybe it is worth only face value. Or maybe there is a story hidden inside its metal that deserves a closer look. That's the mystery of American coin collecting. Millions of coins were made, most disappeared into everyday commerce. Some survived. A smaller number survived in unusual condition. And an even smaller number developed characteristics that collectors may consider extraordinary. That's where the hunt begins. So before you throw your next quarter into a vending machine, take a second. Flip it over, check the date. Look for the mint mark. Study the surfaces, examine the design. And if something doesn't look right, don't ignore it. Because sometimes the most interesting coins aren't the ones that scream for attention. Sometimes they're the ones that look completely ordinary until you know exactly what to look for. And that is what makes the 1978 Washington quarter such an intriguing coin to investigate. Next up, the Washington quarter has been one of the most recognizable denominations in United States history. Americans have used these coins for everything from parking meters and vending machines to everyday purchases. And because of that enormous circulation history, quarters can be found almost anywhere. The 1990 D belongs to the later copper-nickel-clad period of the series. By this point, the familiar Washington design had already become deeply established in American commerce. Millions of quarters were being produced, distributed, spent, saved, and eventually forgotten. But coin collecting teaches us something fascinating. A coin's age and its value are not always connected in the way beginners expect. A coin doesn't have to be hundreds of years old to become collectible. Sometimes the difference between an ordinary coin and an extraordinary one can be hidden in a tiny production detail. That's why the first thing we want to establish is exactly what we're looking at. This is a 1990 Washington quarter with a D mint mark, indicating production at the Denver Mint. The date appears beneath Washington's portrait on the obverse, while the reverse features the iconic American eagle. If you're examining one yourself, don't just glance at the coin. Use good lighting. Turn it slowly. Look at the surfaces from different angles. Magnification can help reveal details that disappear to the naked eye. Start with the date. Make sure the digits are genuine and undisturbed. Then inspect the mint mark. On a valuable coin, authentication matters tremendously because altered coins can sometimes be made to resemble scarce varieties. A genuine coin should tell a consistent story across its entire surface. Now, let's focus on the condition described for our featured example. Moderate high point wear. High point wear is one of the clearest signs that a coin has spent time in circulation. Every time a quarter moves through a cash register, rubs against another coin, falls onto a hard surface, or sits inside a pocket, tiny amounts of metal can be affected. The highest portions of the design receive the most contact. On Washington's portrait, areas such as the hair and facial features can gradually lose their sharpness. On the reverse, the eagle's raised design elements can also become softer. But our example has an important advantage. The overall design is described as well-preserved. That matters. A circulated coin can still retain considerable detail. In fact, the difference between a heavily worn circulated coin and a lightly circulated coin can be dramatic. This is where the term extremely fine becomes important. Extremely fine, often abbreviated XF or EF, generally describes a circulated coin that has experienced limited wear while retaining substantial original design detail. The exact grade depends on the severity and location of wear, along with other characteristics. Imagine two quarters that have both been in circulation for decades. One is scratched, dull, heavily worn, and missing significant detail. The other shows only moderate wear on the highest points while retaining strong lettering, clear design elements, and attractive surfaces. Even though both coins circulated, collectors may view them very differently. That is why condition is one of the most important factors in numismatics. Now let's look at the light field scratches. The fields are the relatively open areas surrounding the major design elements. On the obverse, these areas surround Washington's portrait. On the reverse, the open spaces around the eagle provide another important surface for examination. Light scratches are common on circulated coins. They can result from contact with other coins, storage materials, handling, or everyday use. But collectors need to determine whether a mark is simply circulation damage or whether it could actually be connected to the manufacturing process. That distinction can completely change the conversation. For example, a random scratch occurring after the coin left the mint is normally just damage. But an unusual feature that was created during striking could potentially represent a legitimate mint error or variety. And this is where your investigation needs to slow down. Don't assume. Don't exaggerate. Don't automatically call every unusual line an error. Instead, compare the feature against documented examples and seek expert authentication when appropriate. Now, let's talk about the composition of the 1990D Washington quarter. Unlike the earlier Washington quarters struck in 90% silver, the 1990D quarter is part of the copper-nickel-clad era. The standard quarter of this period weighs approximately 5.67 grams, has a diameter of approximately 24.3 millimeters, and is about 1.75 millimeters thick. Those measurements can be useful when examining unusual coins. Suppose someone claims that a particular quarter has a dramatic planchet problem, or another unusual production characteristic. One of the first things a serious collector may do is weigh the coin accurately. A significant weight difference can sometimes provide an important clue, but again, weight alone does not prove rarity. There are many reasons a coin can gain or lose a small amount of weight after production, including wear, damage, environmental effects, or measurement differences. That's why professional analysis considers multiple factors together. Now turn the quarter over again. Look at the eagle. The reverse of the Washington quarter carries powerful national symbolism. The eagle represents strength and freedom, and the inscriptions surrounding it reinforce the coin's identity as an official United States denomination. On our featured coin, the overall design details are described as well-preserved. That's important because strong remaining detail can contribute to the coin's visual appeal. Collectors often want coins that still show the original artistry of the design. Even when some wear is present, a coin with balanced surfaces and clear details can be much more attractive than a coin with severe damage. Now here comes one of the biggest questions. Why would anyone pay tens of thousands of dollars for a 1990D quarter? The answer cannot simply be because it's old. It isn't particularly old compared with many classic US coins, and it cannot simply be because it has a D. Millions of coins have been struck with Denver mint marks. So if a coin were ever legitimately worth something in the neighborhood of $69,000, there would need to be a very strong reason. That reason could involve an extraordinary mint error, a rare recognized variety, exceptional condition, unusual provenance, or another characteristic that makes the individual coin significantly different from an ordinary example. This is why collectors should never rely on a single value number they see online. You need evidence, auction records, professional grading, authentication, comparable sales, specialized references, and a clear explanation of what makes the coin scarce. That's the difference between a genuine collectible and an internet rumor. Now imagine you're going through a collection of quarters. You find a 1990D. You notice it has some wear. You see a few light scratches. The design looks surprisingly strong. Would you throw it back into the spending pile? Maybe. But if something else catches your attention, perhaps unusual doubling, an abnormal edge, an off-center strike, an unexpected planchet characteristic, or another potentially mint-made feature, you should stop and investigate. Take clear photographs. Record the weight. Measure the diameter if appropriate. Compare the coin with known examples. And don't clean it. This point deserves repeating. Never polish or chemically clean a potentially valuable coin. Cleaning can permanently alter the surface and may reduce its collector appeal. Even if a coin looks dirty, that surface may contain information about its originality. Leave it alone. Protect it. Document it. then get expert advice. Now let's discuss rarity. Rarity is one of the most misunderstood concepts in coin collecting. A coin can be old but common. A coin can be modern but scarce in a particular condition. A coin can have a huge mintage but become difficult to locate with a specific error. And a coin can appear unusual without actually being rare. True rarity is about how many examples exist or how difficult they are to obtain in the specific category collectors care about. That means we shouldn't simply ask, how many 1990D quarters were made? We should ask something more precise. How many examples exist with the exact characteristics we're examining? How many have been authenticated? How many have reached a particular grade? How many have appeared in major auctions? And how strong is collector demand? Those questions reveal much more about potential value. And collector demand is another major piece of the puzzle. Washington quarters have one enormous advantage: familiarity. Collectors don't need to explain what a Washington quarter is. Almost everyone in the United States recognizes it. That creates a massive potential collecting audience. Some collectors focus on complete date and mint sets. Others hunt errors. Others specialize in high-grade examples. Others collect unusual varieties. And some simply enjoy searching circulation for something unexpected. That's why the Washington quarter remains such an accessible entry point into numismatics. You can begin with pocket change. But if you're serious, you eventually learn grading terminology, die varieties, mint errors, authentication, preservation, and auction history. And that's when coin hunting becomes much more than a hobby. It becomes research. Now let's return to our stated market figure. The $69,000 value in today's video scenario should be treated as a claimed target value associated with the extraordinary example being discussed, not as the universal market price of all 1990D Washington quarters. That distinction protects viewers from one of the biggest problems in online coin content: unrealistic valuations. If you search your change and find an ordinary 1990D quarter, don't expect thousands of dollars. Instead, use the opportunity to learn. Study the coin. Understand what normal looks like. Then unusual features become easier to recognize. That is how experienced collectors develop their eyes. They don't learn only what rare coins look like. They learn what normal coins look like first. Once you understand normal, abnormal becomes obvious, and that principle can save you countless hours. Now consider the historical background. The 1990s were a period of significant change in American life. Technology was accelerating. Personal computers were becoming increasingly common. The internet was beginning to transform communication. American culture was changing rapidly. And throughout all of it, the U.S. Mint continued producing billions of coins for everyday commerce. Those coins became tiny time capsules. A 1990D quarter isn't just a piece of metal. It represents a moment in American economic history. Someone may have received this exact coin at a grocery store. Another person might have used it at a gas station. A child might have put it in a piggy bank. A cashier may have counted it hundreds of times. And eventually, decades later, it could end up in the hands of a collector asking a completely different question. Is this ordinary quarter actually unusual? That is what makes coin collecting so addictive, You're not only searching for money, you're searching for stories. Now let's discuss practical tips for collectors. If you find a 1990D Washington quarter, first identify the date and mint mark. Second, inspect both sides under strong neutral lighting. Third, examine the major design elements for unusual characteristics. Fourth, inspect the edge. Fifth, check the weight if something appears abnormal. Sixth, compare the coin with trustworthy references. Seventh, avoid cleaning. And eighth, if the coin appears genuinely significant, consider professional authentication and grading. Don't rely on a blurry photograph. Don't rely on a social media comment. And don't pay a huge fee simply because someone promises your quarter is worth a fortune. Get independent evidence. That's how you protect yourself. And remember something else. Condition is not the same as rarity. A beautiful common coin can still be common. A rare coin can sometimes be worn. The goal is to understand both. Our featured 1990D quarter is described as circulated, extremely fine, with moderate high point wear and light field scratches, while retaining strong overall design detail. That combination gives us a fascinating example of how a coin can remain visually appealing even after spending time in circulation. But if we're talking about a value approaching $69,000, the condition description alone would not be enough. There would need to be something exceptional about the individual coin. And that is exactly where your detective work begins. So before we move on, take another mental picture of this quarter. 1990, D mint mark, Washington quarter, moderate high point wear, light field scratches, strong remaining design detail, circulated extremely fine appearance, and a stated extraordinary market value of $69,000 in the scenario we're examining. But don't let the number distract you from the real lesson. The real lesson is that rare coin value depends on evidence. The date starts the search. The mint mark adds another clue. The condition tells part of the story. The surfaces reveal how the coin lived. The errors and varieties may reveal how it was made. Authentication tells us whether the characteristics are genuine. And market records tell us what collectors have actually been willing to pay. Put all of those pieces together, and suddenly you're not simply looking at a quarter. You're solving a puzzle. And sometimes, the smallest detail can be the most important clue. So the next time you see a 1990D Washington quarter, don't automatically ignore it because it looks modern. Don't assume it is valuable just because someone online claims a huge price. And don't assume it is worthless simply because it has circulated. Look closer. Study the details. Learn the difference between normal wear and unusual mint-made characteristics. Because somewhere among America's billions of coins, there are pieces that have survived with stories that most people will never notice. And the person who notices first may be the person who finds the hidden treasure. The 1990D Washington quarter is therefore another perfect reminder of why coin collecting remains so exciting. Sometimes the most valuable clue isn't visible from across the room. Sometimes you need to turn the coin under the light, slow down, examine the smallest details, and ask one simple question. What makes this coin different? That question is where every great coin discovery begins. Next up, the real mystery is what makes a particular example stand apart from ordinary production. So let's slow down, examine the coin like a serious collector, and uncover the details that could make this modern quarter so interesting. The first thing to understand is the person represented on this coin, Dr. Sally Ride. Sally Ride holds a unique place in American history. She became the first American woman to travel into space, launching aboard the Space Shuttle Challenger in 1983. Her achievement represented a major milestone in the history of American space exploration and became an inspiration for generations of people interested in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, aviation, and space exploration. Decades later, the United States Mint honored her through the American Women Quarters program. This program introduced quarters featuring notable American women and their contributions to the United States. That means the 2022 Sally Ride quarter isn't simply another Washington quarter with a different picture on the reverse. It belongs to a modern commemorative-style circulating series designed to tell stories about influential American women. And that historical connection can make the series particularly attractive to collectors. On the obverse, the coin retains the familiar portrait of George Washington. But turn the coin over, and the story changes. The reverse features Sally Ride, surrounded by imagery connected to space exploration. The design captures the theme of scientific achievement and the excitement of America's space program. For a collector, this creates something important: historical narrative. A coin can be valuable to a collector for more than just metal content. Its design can represent a person, event, achievement, or cultural moment. And Sally Ride's story is especially powerful because she wasn't simply associated with space exploration. She became a symbol of breaking barriers in American science and spaceflight. Now, let's focus on the specific example we're examining. The description tells us this coin has sharp relief details. That is an important observation. When a coin is struck with strong dies and sufficient pressure, the design elements can appear crisp and well-defined. Fine details may stand out clearly. The lettering can look strong. Edges and design transitions can appear clean. On a modern quarter, sharp detail can contribute significantly to visual appeal. Now imagine comparing two 2022 D Sally Ride quarters. The first has been circulating for years. Its surfaces are dull, its highest points are softened, and its design details have begun to lose their original sharpness. The second has strong details, attractive surfaces, and minimal evidence of circulation. Even though both coins have the same date and mint mark, collectors may view them very differently. That is the importance of condition. The coin we're discussing is described as circulated to about uncirculated. About uncirculated, often abbreviated AU, is a grading category used for coins that show very limited evidence of circulation. An AU coin may have slight wear on the highest points, but much of its original detail and surface quality remains. However, the exact grade matters tremendously. There is a major difference between a lower-end AU coin and a truly exceptional mint-state example. And that is why collectors don't simply say, "This coin looks good." They evaluate specific characteristics. How much wear is present? Where is the wear? How strong is the strike? How much original luster remains? Are there scratches? Are there marks in focal areas? Has the coin been cleaned? Does the surface look original? Is there evidence of an unusual die variety or mint error? Those questions can transform a casual coin inspection into a serious numismatic investigation. Now let's talk about the phrase original satin-like luster. Luster is one of the most visually appealing characteristics of a freshly struck coin. It results from the interaction between the metal surface and the striking process. When light moves across a coin with original luster, the surface can produce a distinctive shimmering effect. That effect can become weaker as a coin circulates. Fingerprints, rubbing, environmental exposure, friction, cleaning, and other forms of contact can alter the original surface. So when a collector sees a coin retaining attractive original luster, it can immediately become more interesting. But there's another detail in our description: light contact marks. That tells us this is not necessarily a perfect coin. Small contact marks can happen when coins collide with one another during production, transportation, storage, or circulation. On a modern coin, tiny marks aren't necessarily surprising. The question is whether those marks are severe enough to reduce the coin's grade or eye appeal. Imagine the coin under strong lighting. You rotate it slowly. The light travels across Sally Ride's portrait and the surrounding design. You examine the lettering. Then you move toward the edge. You look for scratches. You inspect the fields. You check whether the surfaces have been artificially polished. And finally, you turn the coin back over to Washington. This is the kind of examination that separates casual searching from serious collecting. Now let's discuss the D mint mark. The D indicates that the coin was produced at the Denver Mint. Modern U.S. coin collectors frequently pay attention to mint marks because different facilities can produce coins with different production characteristics and because particular varieties and errors can become associated with specific mintages. But once again, the mint mark alone does not create a $50,000 valuation. This is critical. A 2022 D Sally Ride quarter found in ordinary change is not automatically worth thousands of dollars. The value scenario we're presenting here is based on the stated $50,000 target value for an exceptional rare example, not a blanket valuation for the entire 2022 D issue. If you're searching your own coins, you should verify any extraordinary claim through recognized numismatic references, professional grading services, and documented auction results. Now let's look at the physical characteristics. A standard modern U.S. clad quarter is approximately 24.3 millimeters in diameter, weighs about 5.67 grams, and is approximately 1.75 millimeters thick. These specifications are useful because they establish a baseline. If you believe you have found an unusual mint error, one of the first things you can do is document the coin's weight and dimensions. A precision scale can reveal differences that aren't visible to the naked eye. For example, a coin that is significantly underweight might raise questions about the plancher. A coin with unusual dimensions could also deserve investigation, but don't jump to conclusions. Scale readings can be affected by equipment accuracy, dirt, moisture, or other factors. Professional authentication is the safest route when the potential value becomes significant. Now consider the historical importance of Sally Ride herself. Her first spaceflight took place aboard Challenger in 1983. She was part of a period when the United States was continuing to push the boundaries of human spaceflight. Her achievement became a major milestone for American women in science and exploration. The quarter therefore serves as a tiny piece of American history. Think about that. A coin small enough to disappear between the cushions of a sofa can carry the image of someone who helped change the story of American space exploration. That is one of the reasons modern commemorative and circulating programs can be so compelling. They turn everyday objects into miniature history lessons. Now imagine finding this coin years from now. The date would still be visible. The Sally Ride design would still tell its story. And future collectors might look back at the American Women Quarters program as an important chapter in U.S. coinage. That doesn't mean every coin from the program will become extremely valuable. In fact, most won't. But some individual coins can become important because of exceptional preservation, unusual varieties, errors, low survival rates in top grades, or strong collector demand. And that's where the $50,000 figure in today's story becomes intriguing. The number is dramatic. But the real question isn't simply, is this quarter worth $50,000? The real question is, what evidence would be required before anyone should believe that valuation? That's the question a professional collector would ask. Suppose someone discovers a 2022 D Sally Ride quarter and notices something unusual. Maybe the lettering looks doubled. Maybe the edge appears abnormal. Maybe the coin is unusually thick. Maybe the design seems shifted. Maybe there is an unexpected die characteristic. The first step should not be posting a blurry photograph online and assuming it's a major error. Instead, document the coin carefully. Photograph both sides. Photograph the edge. Record the weight. Measure the diameter. Use magnification. Compare the coin with verified examples, and then seek professional opinions. The reason is simple. Post-mint damage can imitate valuable mint errors. A coin dropped onto a hard surface can develop strange shapes. A coin squeezed against another object can develop distortions. Chemical exposure can alter the color. Cleaning can create unusual-looking surfaces. Heat can change metal characteristics, and circulation can flatten details. Experienced collectors learn to distinguish these conditions from genuine mint-made abnormalities. Now let's return to our featured coin's light contact marks. Rather than automatically viewing these marks as a negative, think about what they tell us. They suggest the coin has experienced some handling or contact. The key question becomes whether the marks are minor enough to preserve strong overall eye appeal. A coin doesn't need to be absolutely flawless to be collectible. But the closer a coin approaches pristine condition, the more important tiny imperfections can become. This is especially true with modern coins, where large numbers of high-quality pieces may exist. When supply is plentiful, collectors may become much more selective about condition. That means an ordinary circulated example may be common, while an exceptional example can be dramatically more interesting. This principle applies across numismatics. Condition creates separation. Now, imagine a collector opening a roll of 2022 quarters. One after another, the coins come out. Most show contact marks. Some have dull surfaces. Some have fingerprints. Some have small scratches. But then one coin catches the light differently. The surfaces appear unusually original. The details look remarkably sharp. The design seems crisp. You rotate it. The luster moves across the surface. You look at the date. You check the mint mark. D. Then you turn it over. Sally Ride. And suddenly the search gets serious. Is it simply a nice coin, or is there something more? That's the moment every coin hunter dreams about. Not necessarily because the coin is guaranteed to make you rich, but because you found something that deserves investigation. And that is the real excitement of numismatics. The hunt itself, the uncertainty, the research, the discovery, the history, the possibility. Now, let's discuss collector demand. The American Women Quarters program has attracted attention because it combines American history with modern coin collecting. Collectors can build complete sets. They can search for each woman represented in the program. They can collect different mint marks. They can pursue high-grade examples. and they can look for errors and varieties. Sally Ride is particularly recognizable because of her place in the history of American spaceflight. That recognition can help create interest beyond traditional coin collectors. Space enthusiasts may find the coin appealing. History collectors may want it. Women's history collectors may want it. Modern U.S. coin collectors may pursue it. And students or educators may use it as a tangible piece of American history. That broad appeal is valuable because collector demand is one of the forces that helps determine market prices. But again, demand alone doesn't guarantee an extraordinary price. A coin still needs scarcity or another compelling reason for collectors to compete strongly. So if you find a 2022 D Sally Ride quarter, what should you do? First, don't clean it. Do not polish it. Do not use chemicals. Do not rub it with a cloth. Do not scrape the surface. The original surface is part of the coin's history and potential value. Second, handle it by the edges. Natural skin oils can affect surfaces, especially on coins being preserved for long-term collecting. Third, examine it under good lighting. A magnifying glass can help reveal details that aren't obvious to the naked eye. Fourth, weigh it. Fifth, compare it with known examples. And sixth, if you believe you have something exceptional, consider professional authentication and grading. This is especially important when someone is discussing a value as high as $50,000. The higher the claimed value, the more important reliable evidence becomes. So let's summarize what makes today's featured 2022 D Sally Ride quarter interesting. It is a modern Washington quarter. It carries the 2022 date. It has the D Mint mark, identifying Denver production. It belongs to the American Women Quarters program. It honors Dr. Sally Ride, an important figure in American space exploration. The featured example is described as having sharp relief details. It retains original satin-like luster. It shows light contact marks. Its described condition is circulated to about uncirculated. And the stated value for this particular rare coin scenario is $50,000. But remember the most important lesson. A regular 2022 D Sally Ride quarter is not automatically a $50,000 coin. The extraordinary value would require extraordinary evidence. That could involve a rare error, recognized variety, exceptional grade, unusual production characteristic, or another factor supported by credible numismatic research and market records. And that's exactly why you should never judge a coin only by its age. A coin doesn't have to be 100 years old to become interesting. Sometimes history is being made right in front of us. The 2022 D Sally Ride quarter is a perfect example of how modern American coinage can connect everyday pocket change with major moments in the nation's history. One side carries George Washington. The other carries the memory of a pioneering American astronaut. And between those two faces is a small piece of metal that traveled through the economy, passed through countless hands, and potentially survived with characteristics worth investigating. So the next time you receive a quarter, don't automatically throw it into the pile. Look at it, turn it over, check the date, check the mint mark, study the design, watch how the light moves across the surface. And if something looks unusual, don't ignore it. Because the most exciting discoveries in coin collecting don't always begin with an ancient coin locked inside a museum. Sometimes they begin with a modern quarter that looks ordinary, until somebody takes the time to look closer. And when you understand what you're looking at, that little piece of American change becomes something much bigger. A story, a historical artifact, a collector's challenge, and possibly, in an exceptional and properly authenticated case, a very valuable piece of American numismatic history. Next up, now we move to a coin that looks almost nothing like the polished, picture-perfect examples you might see in a professional coin display. This 1978 Washington quarter is described as having severe environmental corrosion, dark surface oxidation, and heavy circulation wear, placing it in a heavily circulated good condition. That raises the biggest question of all. How can a heavily worn quarter with corrosion and a darkened surface possibly become a five-figure collectible? The answer takes us deep into one of the most misunderstood areas of coin collecting, where condition, originality, minting history, environmental damage, rarity, and documented market evidence all have to be separated before anyone can determine what a coin is truly worth. Let's begin with the most obvious feature, 1978, without a mint mark. For a collector, the absence of a mint mark can immediately attract attention, but it doesn't automatically mean the coin is rare. In the United States, mint system, coins produced at different facilities can carry different identifying marks, while coins struck at Philadelphia historically often appeared without a mint mark during periods when Philadelphia did not use one. Therefore, seeing a 1978 Washington quarter without a mint mark is not, by itself, proof that you've discovered an extremely rare error. And this is where our investigation becomes important. A valuable coin isn't necessarily valuable because one feature looks unusual. A serious collector wants to know whether that feature was intentionally produced, normally produced, accidentally produced, altered after production, or simply misunderstood. So if you have a 1978 quarter with no mint mark, the first step is not excitement. The first step is verification. Look at the date carefully. Confirm that the coin really is 1978. Make sure the mint mark hasn't been removed. This matters because a coin that appears to have no mint mark could potentially have been damaged, altered, polished, or otherwise manipulated. The surface around the expected mint mark location should be examined under magnification. Now look at the overall condition. Our example is described as having severe environmental corrosion. That immediately changes the conversation. Environmental exposure can dramatically alter a coin's appearance. Coins can spend years underground in damp containers, exposed to chemicals, moisture, salt, soil, or other contaminants. The resulting surfaces can become dark, rough, discolored, pitted, or crusty. To an inexperienced eye, that can sometimes make a coin look ancient. But appearance and age are not the same thing. A dark surface does not automatically mean the coin is rare. Corrosion does not automatically increase value. And a heavily worn coin does not automatically become collectible simply because it looks unusual. In fact, environmental damage can reduce a coin's desirability considerably. That is why this particular example is so interesting from a storytelling perspective. We're dealing with a coin that is described as heavily circulated and in good condition, yet it has been assigned a hypothetical or claimed market value of $57,000 in today's scenario. To understand such a valuation responsibly, we have to ask what additional factor could justify such a premium. Could it be a recognized variety? Could there be a legitimate mint error? Could there be unusual provenance? Could it be an authenticated experimental or transitional issue? Could the stated value be based on an exceptional auction result for a fundamentally different example? These are the questions that separate responsible numismatics from internet coin hype. Let's step back and look at the history of the Washington quarter. The Washington quarter was introduced in 1932 to honor George Washington's bicentennial. The design became one of the most recognizable pieces of American coinage, and the denomination eventually transitioned from silver to copper-nickel clad composition in 1965. The 1978 quarter belongs to that clad era. The standard clad quarter of this period has a copper core surrounded by copper-nickel layers. It weighs approximately 5.67 grams, measures approximately 24.3 millimeters in diameter, and is around 1.75 millimeters thick. These physical characteristics are extremely useful when examining unusual pieces. Imagine discovering a 1978 quarter that you believe might be an extraordinary error. You don't simply look at it, you weigh it. You measure it. You examine its edge. You compare its appearance to a normal example, and you document everything. The edge can be particularly interesting because clad coins often reveal their layered construction along the rim. If the edge looks dramatically different, that may warrant additional investigation. But once again, unusual does not automatically mean valuable. A damaged edge can look unusual. Corrosion can alter an edge. A coin can be scraped, bent, filed, plated, chemically treated, or exposed to environmental conditions. That's why authentication matters. Now let's focus on the dark surface oxidation described on our featured coin. Dark oxidation can produce a dramatic visual effect. Under certain lighting, the coin may appear almost black or charcoal-colored. Parts of Washington's portrait might become difficult to distinguish. The lettering can lose contrast. On the reverse, The eagle can appear muted against the darker background. But collectors must distinguish between natural toning, environmental damage, chemical alteration, and ordinary discoloration. These are not interchangeable terms. Toning can sometimes be desirable when it is attractive and natural. Environmental damage, on the other hand, can be a serious problem, and artificial chemical treatment can create additional concerns. This is why cleaning or attempting to restore the coin at home can be disastrous. If you discover an unusual 1978 quarter, don't use vinegar, don't use abrasive polish, don't scrub it with a brush, don't soak it in household chemicals, don't attempt to make it shiny. A coin's original surface is part of its identity, and aggressive cleaning can leave permanent hairlines or remove surface characteristics that professional graders need to evaluate. Instead, preserve the coin in its existing state. Take photographs, record its weight, record its measurements, and if you believe it has a legitimate rare characteristic, have it examined by a qualified numismatic professional. Now let's examine the heavy circulation wear. A heavily circulated quarter tells a fascinating story. Think about the number of hands it could have passed through. Perhaps it bought a newspaper. Perhaps it was used at a grocery store. Perhaps it sat inside a cash register. Perhaps it traveled across several states. Perhaps it spent years in someone's pocket. Every transaction left a tiny mark. Every contact with another coin added another scratch. Every fall onto a hard surface could remove another fragment of detail. Over time, the coin's highest points became smooth. Washington's hair lost definition. The eagle's feathers became flattened. The lettering became softer. The rim experienced contact. And eventually, the coin entered what collectors might broadly describe as a good or heavily circulated state. In normal circumstances, that amount of wear would usually make the coin less valuable than a high-grade example. This is why the $57,000 figure is such a dramatic claim. A collector shouldn't assume that wear creates rarity. Usually, the opposite is true. Higher grades can command major premiums when a coin is genuinely scarce. So if a heavily worn coin is claimed to be worth $57,000, there must be something beyond ordinary age and circulation supporting that number. That something is the mystery we would want to solve. Let's talk about rarity. Rarity can come from several different sources. A coin may have a low mintage. It may have a low surviving population. It may be rare in a particular grade. It may contain a recognized die variety. It may have a legitimate minting error. Or it may possess a combination of characteristics that makes it exceptionally difficult to find. But remember this critical distinction. Rare does not always mean valuable, and valuable does not always mean rare in the way beginners assume. Demand matters. A coin could be scarce but have very little collector interest. Another coin could have a large population but become highly desirable because collectors compete intensely for the best examples. The market is driven by people. Collectors decide what they want. Dealers evaluate what they believe they can sell. Auction participants determine how aggressively they are willing to bid, and professional grading services provide standardized opinions about condition. That is why a claimed market value should always be treated as a starting point for investigation rather than a guaranteed paycheck. Now imagine you're searching through an old box of coins. You discover this dark 1978 quarter. Your first reaction might be, this looks old. But instead of stopping there, turn on a bright light. Use magnification. Inspect both sides. Check the date. Look at the mint mark area. Examine the rim. Look at the edge. Weigh it. Then compare it with a normal 1978 Washington quarter. You're looking for differences that can be explained. If the coin is simply corroded, the dark surface may tell you about its environment, not its rarity. If the coin shows a genuine minting anomaly, that's different. The distinction is everything. Now let's discuss the composition. Because the 1978 quarter is a copper nickel-clad coin, the outer layers contain copper and nickel, while the core is primarily copper. This construction gives the coin its familiar appearance and distinguishes it from earlier silver Washington quarters. That means you should not assume that every Washington quarter from before 1965 and after 1965 has the same metal content. For collectors, composition is extremely important. It can affect weight. It can affect appearance. It can affect the edge. And it can influence how a coin reacts to environmental exposure. Our 1978 example therefore belongs firmly to the clad era. Now consider the coin's unique features. Based solely on the description provided, the most obvious features are its lack of a mint mark, severe environmental corrosion, dark oxidation, and heavy wear. But those characteristics alone do not establish an $57,000 valuation. That's something viewers should understand before searching their own change. A normal 1978 quarter without a mint mark should not be treated as a $57,000 coin simply because it matches the date. Instead, the key question is, what documented characteristics separates this particular specimen from ordinary examples? That is the question a professional numismatist would want answered. And this is exactly why the coin market can be so fascinating. The difference between an ordinary coin and an extraordinary coin can sometimes be incredibly small. A tiny die characteristic, a subtle doubling feature, an unusual planchet, a striking anomaly, a scarce variety, a remarkable provenance, a dramatic mint error, something that the average person would never notice. But before calling something a rare error, collectors need evidence. One of the best habits you can develop is learning to compare your coin against authenticated reference examples. Do not rely entirely on random social media posts. Do not trust a screenshot showing an enormous price without verifying what actually sold. Do not confuse an asking price with a completed sale. Someone can list a common coin online for $100,000. That doesn't mean anyone will pay $100,000 for it. The actual market is determined by completed transactions and credible evidence. So where does that leave our 1978 Washington quarter without a mint mark? It leaves us with a fascinating coin and an important warning. Within the scenario presented for this video, the coin carries a stated market value of $57,000. But that figure should be understood as a claimed or scenario-specific value, not as a guaranteed price for every 1978 no-mint mark Washington quarter. For an actual coin to command such a price, collectors would expect strong evidence supporting its rarity, authenticity, and market significance. If you genuinely believe you have such a coin, professional evaluation is the smartest next step. And if your coin turns out to be ordinary, don't be disappointed. You've still learned something valuable. You've learned how American coins were manufactured. You've learned the difference between mint-made characteristics and post-mint damage. You've learned why condition matters. You've learned why cleaning is dangerous. And you've learned that a coin's story is often more complicated than its date. That is the real skill of coin collecting. You are not simply searching for old coins. You are searching for evidence. Every scratch tells you something. Every worn detail tells you something. Every discoloration raises a question. Every mint mark provides another clue. And sometimes, the absence of a mint mark becomes part of the investigation. So if a dark, heavily circulated 1978 Washington quarter ever lands in your hands, don't immediately spend it, and don't immediately declare yourself rich either. Take a breath. Look closely. Check the date. Inspect the mint mark area. Examine the edge. Measure the coin. Study the surfaces. Compare it with authenticated examples. And if something genuinely unusual appears, get professional help. Because the difference between an ordinary quarter and a truly extraordinary collectible isn't a dramatic story. It's evidence. And that is why this worn 1978 Washington quarter makes such a suspenseful case study. A coin that may look damaged. A coin that may appear ordinary. A coin that has clearly traveled through circulation. Yet, under the value scenario we're examining, a coin assigned a stunning $57,000 market value. Whether that number can be justified for a real-world specimen would depend on authentication, specific rarity, condition, and actual market evidence. But the possibility is enough to remind us of one powerful lesson. Never judge a coin only by what you see at first glance. Sometimes the most interesting clues are hiding where almost nobody thinks to look.